me now to discuss this further is Kanwal Sibal, former Foreign Secretary of India and also India's ambassador to Russia. Ambassador Sibal, thank you very much for joining us. You know, Donald Trump has drawn some red lines ahead of the summit, saying that Crimea will not be handed over to Ukraine and Ukraine cannot be allowed to join the NATO as well. How do you see the atmosphere in which this summit is really taking place at the White House?
It's going to be a very difficult summit in the sense that Zelenskyy has made it very clear that he's not going to agree to any territorial compromise of a permanent nature. The argument is that the Ukrainian constitution does not allow the cession of territory to anyone. There have been formulas floating that the situation can be frozen where it is without any de jure recognition of the incorporation of these territories, these 4 oblasts, into the Russian Federation. Other than that, I think Zelenskyy will not be able to remain in office if he made any territorial concession. In fact, his future would become very parlous. As it is, he's not had elections, and the Russians consider him not to be a legitimate president, etc. So believe that aside. The other is that Europe is fully backing him and have taken a very hardline position in the statements they issued when the coalition of the willing met in Europe. And now they have, most of them have accompanied the big ones to Zelenskyy in Washington. So they want to make sure that Zelenskyy, 2 things. One, that Zelenskyy does not get bullied again. And number 2, that Zelenskyy is able to have a stronger hand with Trump, because he would have major powers of the European Union backing him. Right. And the Europeans are going to do everything possible to prevent the kind of solution to the crisis that Putin wants and what Trump seems to be veering towards. Because as you rightly said, he had earlier focused essentially on the ceasefire and then to begin talks with regard to a more durable peace. Now the situation has been reversed, where Trump himself has conceded that we'll go straight for a peace agreement because ceasefire agreements do not necessarily hold out. And now Rubio, just to complete that, and Rubio has now expanded on that theme, saying that the experience with the ceasefire is what it is, and therefore we must go in for a ceasefire agreement, and also no sanctions. Because if they were to impose any sanctions at this stage, this will actually mean that the further negotiations would not take place and the war will continue for another 6 months or 1 year. So the outlook is not very, very positive, I think, with regard to...
Outlook isn't very positive as of now. When it comes to land swap that Donald Trump has been speaking about, the European Union leaders are expected to argue strongly against any land swap that rewards or ends up rewarding Russia, so to say. In these circumstances, will there be any positive movement today, or will President Trump emerge out of this exercise in the next few days as more frustrated?
Well, I don't know what this land swap means, because if it means that some of the territories which Russia has now occupied in the Sumy region and the Kharkiv region, those can be returned to Ukraine, yes. This is entirely feasible, and Russia, I'm sure, would be happy to do so. But if the land swap means that, the 4 oblasts are some way or the other returned to Ukraine, or that Donbass alone is kept as part of the Russian Federation, and Zaporizhia and Kherson are returned to Ukraine, I don't think it is at all feasible. It's not going to happen. There's no way that Putin and Russia are going to agree after incorporating these 4 oblasts into the Russian Federation post a referendum and making it formally part of the Russian Federation, there is no way that Russia will agree to this. So I don't know what this kite flying about land swap is.
Right. Ambassador Sibal, do you feel that at this juncture, it is in Putin's interest to stop the war? And is he looking for a way out or not as yet? And secondly, do the United States and European Union have any leverage over Putin at this juncture?
I would reverse what you said. I think it is the United States and Europe and Ukraine who are looking for an honorable way out where they can get some concession from Russia, because the situation on the ground is very clear. Ukraine is losing the war, and if they continue for another 6 months, actually the entire front, Ukrainian front, can collapse, and Russia can gain more territory. So in fact, what is being presented as an initiative by the West or Trump to try and find a peaceful solution, to my mind, is motivated by a much larger consideration that if they delayed further any dialogue and continue down the path on which they have been going, then in fact, Ukraine's future would become even more shaky, and Ukraine may actually lose on the military front dramatically. And therefore, something has to be done to find a peaceful solution. So I don't think it's Russia that, yes, of course, Russia will gain a lot if its demands are accepted, the fundamental demands, that no NATO for Ukraine, and that the security concerns of Russia are addressed, and a fair and equal security balance is established in Europe, which means a limitation on the size of the Ukrainian military. Now, I don't think Russia is going to walk back from these demands.
Right. My final question to you would be about India. Now, it is clear, and the government also has said that Brendan Litch, the assistant USTR, is not coming to India for trade negotiations. They're not pursuing those trade talks with India at the moment. We're now bracing for 50% tariff. Do you think at this point, is there any possibility of an understanding between Prime Minister Modi and Donald Trump, or the two sides, to at least put aside the 25% additional tariff?
No, when you say an understanding between President Trump and Prime Minister, I'm not sure what that exactly implies. If it implies that they're going to have a conversation on the phone and Trump is going to be generous and say that, look, I'm not going to impose this, I don't think that's going to happen. Trump has already indicated in the context of China that fact that the conversations at Alaska are proceeding. He's open not to impose any penalties, the additional penalties because of buying oil from Russia. He said, well, you know, at least for the next 2-3 weeks, something like that, he said, which means that come August 27, he would have no reason to impose these penalties on India without also simultaneously having to take a decision on China, which he's not taking because he's given himself a 90-day period to negotiate the final tariff agreement with China. So I have a feeling that he will keep this hanging in the air, but will not impose this penalty. And he'll use this to extract, you know, further down the road, more concessions from us if he can.
Right. All right. Ambassador Sibal, thank you very much for joining us on the program. A very important meeting that's taking place at the White House, but perhaps no immediate implications or takeaways from India, and President Trump would want to maintain that leverage in the form of additional penalties on Indian goods. Let's now take a look at some of the other news.